After the London incident, Chai Naeun was waiting for someone. Hajin arrived and asked her why she was the only one there, inquiring where the other members of the travel club were. She told him they had already gone to the restaurant because he was late. She added that she would buy him dinner today. Surprised, Hajin asked why this was a social occasion for her to offer him dinner. He felt something was off. Naeun stopped and turned to him, asking if he thought they could at least be friends. Hajin responded with a firm no. Furious, Naeun told him to forget everything she just said. Hajin could never become friends with her, as he was the one who would have to kill the most important person to her one day. Later, Hajin arrived at his dorm. Evangel came running, excited that Hajin had brought her food. She was so happy, and Hajin was pleased that she was quiet and obedient. With only 3 days left before the new semester started, Hajin decided to link his smartwatch. It had been troublesome for him to open his laptop whenever something happened, so he had been saving SP points. Thanks to Jung Yeong, he had accumulated many SP points, and now he could finally synchronize his laptop with his smartwatch. Once the process was complete, he could access various things through his smartwatch. It was incredibly convenient, and he thanked Jung Yeong once again. One last important task remained. Hajin contacted his agent, Park Soo-hyuk, and asked if he would buy the motorbike. Park confirmed that he was referring to the motorbike he had requested. Hajin confirmed, and Park said he was looking for the one with the best specs. However, even without all the options, the price was over 150 million won. Hajin told him to get the bike with all the options. Park was shocked and asked if he was serious. Hajin confirmed and told him to proceed. Park agreed. Hajin had won 2 billion from the casino, and the day was approaching when the masked demon master would raid Suwon's den of devils. This meant his stock price was going to skyrocket. After a long break, everyone returned to the cube, and the atmosphere seemed lively. Some cadets were talking about social media. Hajin realized he hadn't checked the main character's social media in a while. He started with Jonghaek's profile. After viewing it, he felt cringe. Kim Suho and Yoo Yona didn't use social media. Naeun had uploaded her last post after the London incident. Hajin arrived at his classroom, where the instructor informed everyone that a new semester had started. He said this semester was different. Not only would their rankings change, but new cadets would also join them. Transfer cadets from 10 magic academies around the world. 20 from each academy, for a total of 200 new cadets. The instructor called out the names of the cadets who would be joining the Verdia class. Hajin noticed a familiar face, Tomar. He remembered her and wondered what she was doing here. Hajin checked for any story changes and realized she was trying to build connections from the start. He worried that another source of trouble had appeared. Later, Hajin moved into his new house. Evangel excitedly asked if they were really going to live in such a big house. He confirmed that they were. She was thrilled. Hajin had moved to new accommodation due to his rise in ranks. He also wondered what he should do about Tamar. Class Verdia gathered outside for their first lesson, which was outdoor training. The main objective was to help the existing cadets and the transfer cadets get to know each other. They were headed to a dangerous mountain. The instructor told them there were no dangerous monsters, but there were numerous traps, and he warned them not to be careless unless they wanted to seriously injure themselves. Each group consisted of 12 people. Suho and Naeun were on the same team. As everyone entered the forest, the atmosphere felt eerie. It was already night, and the cold was setting in. Suddenly, one of the cadets activated a trap, which captured most of them. While they survived, they kept falling into various traps. Then, a ghost appeared. The cadets were terrified and ran as fast as they could. Suho complimented Naeun for handling the situation well. Naeun asked him if he thought they were friends. Suho, confused, said of course they are. She remembered Hajin's response earlier and wondered why he had said that. Naeun thought maybe it was because he didn't just want to be friends but something more. Hajin arrived with his group and asked what they were doing there. After a while, one of Hajin's group members mentioned an illusion barrier that they had been trapped in, roaming inside for over an hour. Hajin stepped forward and quickly found the entrance. The group remembered they would soon be working as teams, and the cadets had to form groups. One of them told them they could choose their group members. Most hadn't made up their minds yet. Then, one of the girls said she was going to form a group with Hajin. The others were shocked. Naeun asked her why she had chosen him, as he was cold-hearted and difficult to deal with. Naeun regretted saying that, but then another cadet mentioned some negative rumors about Hajin. He said that Hajin often left the cube to enjoy all sorts of entertainment and had connections with gangsters. Suho and Naeun were furious. Naeun asked him if he had seen Hajin doing any of those things with his own eyes. He denied it, saying it was just rumors. Suho told them not to spread such accusations without evidence and defended Hajin, saying he wasn't that kind of person. After that, they all left. In the next scene, Yuna was adjusting her voice change settings as she prepared for the first meeting of the information guild Falling Blossom. This guild was completely independent of the essence of the Straits. She greeted every member as they gathered, and then explained the structure of the guild. She had split Falling Blossom into 3 divisions. Team 1, called the Sajiks, would focus on gathering information and planning for the guild. Sajik's top priority was to uncover plans of rival guilds. Team 2, called the Watchtowers, would focus on locating new dungeons and monitoring the appearance of monsters of upper intermediate grade or above. Team 3, known as the Shadows, operated in the background. Their tasks included investigation, tailing people, kidnapping, and blackmailing. If necessary, they would even resort to taking lives. Yuna then addressed Team 3, giving them 5 targets. However, she strictly warned them not to be seen by the targets or to harm them. 4 of the 5 targets were decoys, but the real target was Kim Hajin. The next morning, Hajin woke up to find a cat, a spirit created by Evangel. This cat wasn't an illusion or a temporary form, but an actual creature that Evangel had made using her abilities. As Hajin stepped outside, he encountered Yuna, who asked where he was headed. He replied that he was going to the canteen. She noted his rank increase, to which Hajin said that he might continue to stay around low in the future. She then asked if he had any plans for the future and if he would be interested in joining the Essence of the Straits, the guild she would eventually lead. It was a guaranteed path to success. Hajin replied that he already had a guild in mind. It wasn't a big guild, but it was made up of mercenaries. Yuna, determined to change his mind, told him she would bring him something he had been looking for a while. Hajin was curious about what she was referring to, but she refused to tell him at that moment. In class, Hajin looked at Suho and remembered that it was time for him to start preparing for the dungeon. In the original story, Kim Suho had climbed Gamuk Mountain after the summer vacation had ended and discovered a new dungeon. Although it was generally impossible for someone to clear a dungeon by themselves unless they were exceptionally strong, Kim Suho, as the protagonist, managed to defeat the dungeon boss on his own. He also obtained an important item, a weapon that was expected to be awakened with sapling dust. The problem was that Hajin had the dust, and he was worried about whether Suho would be able to handle the dungeon on his own. In order for Suho to grow properly, Hajin knew he would have to go with him. In his dorm, Hajin thought about Tamar. He needed to prepare some measures before the dungeon raid, but Tamar wasn't fully on the demonic human side. If he found her father, he might be able to pull her to his side. However, her only goal was to find her father and kill him with her own hands. The problem was that he didn't know where her father was either. He tried using the Book of Truth, but all he got were vague clues. Additionally, Yu Jinyoung only operated in the Korean peninsula, making it pointless to ask him for help. Hajin wondered who he could turn to for assistance. Then, he remembered a guy from the entrance ceremony, Kim Chungdong's only connection, who had graduated from the military academy's intelligence course. His name was Kim Hozob. Kim Hozob was surprised when Hajin called him after a long time. After asking what the matter was, Hajin asked if he's working for a company dealing with information. He confirmed. Hajin explained that he was looking for information to find someone. Hozob replied that he could help as long as he knew the person's name. Hajin thanked him and then asked if his superior was giving him a hard time. Hozob asked how he knew, and Hajin suggested that if he was considering quitting the company, he had a recommendation for him from an information guild called Falling Blossom. They ended the call after that. Meanwhile, Kim Suho was training for the upcoming dungeon raid. Hajin approached him, asking if he was still training this late. Suho asked if Hajin was here to train as well, and Hajin replied that he was just taking a stroll. Hajin mentioned that Suho was working hard, as if he were preparing to clear a dungeon. Suho denied this, saying he was just training as usual. Hajin then brought up Gamuk Mountain and asked if Suho was planning to raid the dungeon by himself. Suho asked how Hajin knew about that. Hajin casually explained that he had seen him by coincidence, as he often left the cube. He also noted that his eyes were sharp. Hajin then proposed that he would go with him to the dungeon, suggesting a 9-to-1 reward ratio. If they found a branch, Hajin would only take a few leaves. Suho considered the offer and Hajin asked how it sounded. Suho confirmed that he had discovered a dungeon on Gamuk Mountain and thought the size of the dungeon was small. Hajin responded that a dungeon is still a dungeon, even if it's small, and it's difficult to clear one solo. Suho agreed that it was risky but asked if he could trust Hajin to watch his back. He wanted to confirm Hajin's abilities. Hajin hadn't expected this. The differences in their abilities were vast, so he knew he had to avoid fighting him head-on. He told Suho that, as a shooter in an open terrain, he was at a disadvantage, and his abilities were heavily dependent on his weapons. Suho assured him he wasn't testing how good his weapon was. He explained that Hajin didn't have to win. He just had to show what he was capable of. The moment Suho infused his mana into his sword, Hajin knew his bullets would be ineffective. If they fought head-on, not only would Hajin lose, but he would also look pathetic. Hajin quickly got an idea. He prepared something and was ready for the fight. Suho immediately charged at him with full speed. Hajin activated bullet time, slowing down time and allowing him to see how Suho's sword would move. Suho struck, but Hajin dodged the attack. Suho immediately went for another strike, which landed even though Hajin had dodged. Hajin pulled his gun and fired at him, but even with bullet time, Suho's attacks were too fast. The longer the fight dragged on, the more disadvantaged Hajin would become. He realized he needed to bait Suho into taking one wrong step. While Hajin was thinking, Suho sneaked up behind him. Hajin was defenseless, but he used ether to pull himself away just in time. Suho was impressed by Hajin's ability to dodge at such a level, but he immediately charged again, as Hajin was still off balance. He almost reached Hajin, but as planned, Hajin stepped on a jacket he had laid on the ground, which triggered an explosion. Suho was thrown into the air and hit the ground. Hajin pointed his gun at him and asked, "Are you satisfied?" Suho, completely stunned. Hajin had used his SP points to turn his jacket into a trap. Suho accepted his defeat and agreed to take Hajin with him. At an abandoned factory in Suwon, Jungyang destroyed a relic and asked Drun why he had made him destroy such a valuable object. Drun explained that there was a way to double its value by using a white crystal. He activated the crystal, which began to replicate the fragments of the broken relic. The relic could produce around 30 swords from just one sword. Based on the mana capacity of the crystal, even more swords could be made. If they sold each sword for a minimum of 700 to 800 won, they could make over 5 billion won. Jong Hak called it the golden goose that lays golden eggs. Just then, Jane caught everyone's attention. She said that the masked demon master had started a dungeon raid in Suwon's Den of Devils, and their target would be the masked demon master himself. The group decided to steal from the masked demon master. After the duel, Suho was reflecting on the battle. Hajin had many openings, and he had done his best to dodge Suho's attacks. But the unknown attack at the very end confused him. Was it physical power or instantaneous mana discharge? No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't figure it out. If Hajin were much more powerful than average, it would attract unnecessary attention. The reason Hajin hid his strength was to protect himself. He thought he was the only one who hid his true power, but now, it seemed there was someone else doing the same. Suho heard some noises and saw Naeun training. He approached her, which startled her. He asked if she was practicing with a sword, to which she replied she was just training her stamina. She asked him what he was doing outside, so late. Suho said he had just met Hajin. She asked what business they had with each other, and he teased her, saying they were talking about her. She immediately burst out at him, and Suho clarified that they just had a sparring session. Naeun asked if Hajin was too weak to spar with him. Suho replied that it was a secret between them. She told him to go away and let her practice alone. Suho suggested she relax her hand when holding the sword. If she gripped it too tightly, she wouldn't be able to cut things as easily as she should. He demonstrated. Naeun was impressed with his demonstration. In the next scene, Naeun was deep in thought. Suho asked if she needed help with her practice. She thought that maybe if she did something different, she'd be able to gain better control. Frustrated after a rough training session, she decided to release her stress by playing video games. She used a VR headset which many active heroes used for image training. The game was called Gladiator of the Century, a popular virtual game played around the world. The league opened every season, and the matches were broadcasted. What set this game apart from others was that it didn't rely on stats or items. Victory could only be achieved through fighting skills and instincts. Naeun had 98 wins and 17 losses. She found an opponent, Extra 7, who had 43 wins and 43 losses. His rank was platinum. Confident in her abilities, she thought she'd easily defeat him. She requested a duel, and he accepted. As the match began, Extra 7 immediately charged at her. To her shock, he grabbed her clothes and knocked her to the ground, defeating her. Furious, she challenged him again and he accepted. But once again, he won. Naeun kept challenging him, but she kept losing. Realizing she couldn't win against him, she tried once more, but he refused, saying it was getting late. She asked if he always logged in around this time, and he confirmed. She asked if they could fight every time they met, and he agreed. It was Hajin playing the game, and he was just testing if his new talent worked in the game as well. The random enhancement function was better than he had expected, though it had cost him a lot of mana. With this enhancement, his device was now on a whole different level compared to others. In the game, he could feel his senses had been enhanced. The probability of enhancement was 50%. As he noticed Evangel eating an entire cake by herself, he took it away, saying he couldn't keep up with her eating habits. She demanded more, but he refused. However, Hajin offered to get her more delicious food the next day, and she agreed. After Evangel fell asleep. Just then, Hajin received a message from Suho confirming the date of the dungeon raid. For the next few days, Hajin trained hard, studied every day, and sparred with Naeun. She asked him how he kept winning every single time. He told her that she just needed to remain calm. She then asked why his win rate was only 50% if he was so good at it. Hajin replied that he balanced his ratio by doing what he enjoyed. However, in reality, he had lost due to random stats. As their daily sparring sessions continued, Hajin noticed that Naeun was acting like they had promised to meet every day. It had become a part of his daily routine. At first, he thought she was a bit strange, but she was always polite. He still wasn't sure how to pronounce her name. He thought about it for a moment, and Naeun came to his mind. But he quickly dismissed the thought based on her actions and politeness. There was no way she could be the person he had initially thought. Kim Suho praised Naeun and said he had noticed some improvement in her. She mentioned that she had been playing a game, and it was helping her improve. Suho asked if she was referring to Gladiator of the Century. Naeun asked if Suho played the game too, and he denied, saying he had only heard of it. Naeun told him that she had met someone skilled who helped her with sparring. She described the person as someone who always charged forward with fast, storm-like attacks. Each step seemed to scare his opponents. Suho liked the description and thought the person could be an active hero. Suddenly, Hajin approached them and asked what they were talking about. Suho mentioned that Naeun was sparring with someone, but she interrupted him, saying that they had just met by coincidence. Suho said she had to practice and left. She asked where they were going, and he told her they had plans. Hajin wished her good luck with her training, and she watched him leave, wondering when they had gotten so close. She remembered him talking about her, and it made her think it might be true, but she doubted it since he didn't even want to be friends. Still curious, she decided to follow them. Hajin then asked Suho how Naeun had been recently with her training. Hearing that, Naeun got flustered. In the next scene, Hajin and Suho stopped by a restaurant to discuss the dungeon raid. While eating, Suho told him they had to be careful. Suwon was one of the most dangerous places in the metropolitan area because when the Ao was active, the area underwent drastic changes. More than half of the area became dangerous to explore, and ordinary people were forbidden from entering the western part of Suwon. The Gamuk Mountains were right on the border of the western area. Although Hajin had designed this world, there were still many hidden pieces that had yet to be discovered. Some of these hidden pieces couldn't be found alone, but if left unchecked, they could fall into the hands of the main villains in the story. However, things would be different if Hajin went with Kim Suho, whose skills were above the intermediate hero grade. Together, they might be able to find those hidden pieces faster than the villains. Suho was confused when he saw Hajin suddenly staring at him. Strangely, Hajin then handed him a tissue and said there was food on his face. Suho thanked him. Hajin thought that Kim Suho was probably poor, so he would take care of the equipment and food supplies. Just then, a person with a completely covered appearance entered. Hajin was puzzled by the suspicious appearance, and, even more so, when the person suddenly seemed startled upon seeing him. After approaching the reception desk, the person asked if her order was ready. The receptionist told her to wait for a while. Hajin looked more carefully at the person's face and thought he recognized who it was. He then grinned slightly and ignorantly said, "Who do we have here? Isn't that Yuyona?" Immediately, Yuyona broke out in a cold sweat. Yuyona asked in a fake voice who Yuyona was. Suho recognized the voice, confirming his suspicion. Hajin then chuckled and said, "Since you're here, you can join us." Suho also invited her to join them, as they had just arrived. She burst into tears, repeatedly denying that she was Yuyona. Finally, her order arrived, and she snatched the parcel before running away as fast as she could. Both the receptionist and Hajin were stunned. Hajin told the receptionist he would pay for her food. After that incident, she avoided Hajin for 3 days.